All right, it's the Storm Tracker podcast back in effect here. Miami.rivals.com, CanesCounty.com. I'm Marcus Benjamin. He is Frank Tucker, and we are going to break down first the fall camp news that we've been getting first, and then we'll go into DBs that are next up for the 2023 class, and then we'll also talk about the next to commit for Miami, and then we'll talk into high school football. But first and foremost, I just want to just want to talk about how football is back officially. Football is back this week with high school football. College football will be starting shortly, and then after that, we're going into the NFL. I mean, we were just talking about fantasy football and how we're already scouting for our teams. But Frank, let's talk a little bit about fall camp though. Fall camp has been up and running and going over there in Coral Gables. Our guys Michael and Anthony Euro have been covering what they can for us down there, and then we'll be down there this week, and we'll continue to bring coverage from fall camp. But what stood out to you so far about fall camp in Miami?
I think Xavier Restrepo has to be what stands out for everybody right now. 8 to 10 catches in this scrimmage. It has been a standout at practice on a regular basis. Mario Cristobal said he stood out in front of 10 NFL scouts on Monday. So I think he's got to be the standout, the guy that's really gunning for that wide receiver one spot despite being a slot receiver. He's the leader of the team right now. His relationship with TVD is going to be big going into the year. I think expectations got to be really high for him with the hype that's going on in fall camp.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I mean, every time I see X, he's out there balling, just, making plays, making big catches, tough catches, diving for the ball. He's just been the same guy that we've always been seeing since, he was at St. Thomas for me. So I'm not surprised at all. What I am surprised is the fact that there really hasn't been another receiver to really kind of challenge Restrepo as far as wide receiver one is concerned. I know Keyshawn Smith is having a great fall camp as well, but you kind of figured that he would have a strong camp because he is the most productive receiver coming back from last year. So you kind of figured he would always be in the mix, and he certainly is in the mix to be a starter for this wide receiver group. But as after him, it's pretty much, kind of a crapshoot. I mean, as far as who is going to be the third and fourth guy, like who are going to be the receivers when they line up in 4 to 5 receiver sets, who is going to be the third, fourth, and fifth receiver. We figure that when we see that type of set 4 or 5, that Keyshawn Smith and X will be there. We can pretty much bet the house on that. But who are going to be those other 3 guys? And that's probably, I wouldn't say it's disappointing, but it's just a little surprising that another receiver hasn't really emerged just yet.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more and more 2 tight end sets, maybe even 3 tight end sets with Arroyo and Mamorelli. Khalil Brantley got some first-team reps at Monday's practice. Jaleel Skinner looked really good in the scrimmage. Super athletic, could play that slot receiver, bump out a little bit wide if he needs to, tight end type role. So I think that there's enough dogs in the room for combined tight end and receiver room to suffice for that wide receiver 3 spot. Obviously, Keyshawn and X are the 2 most consistent guys, but Jacoby George has kind of fallen in line with that consistency. We really haven't seen the big plays from him, but scored a 7-yard touchdown in the spring game. Was a pretty consistent target overall in spring practice and in fall camp so far. I think Colby Young is probably going to have to turn it on a little bit closer to midseason, later in the year. Still kind of acclimating to the Hurricanes program and the standards of being a main guy in that receiver room. He's a JUCO guy. It's not easy for those guys to just jump in and be the man right now. You got to get acclimated to that Power 5 level of play. Everybody's tough. Our standards are high as Hurricane fans, but we got a ton of 4-star, 5-star kids in the building. So he's competing with kids like that on a daily basis. They might not be living up to lofty standards in regards to our expectations of them as a lauded recruit, but the kid is still he's still got to get acclimated. So it's going to be a process. Romello Brinson looks explosive at times. I think they want to see more consistency out of him. Just from what I saw at practice on Monday and here, in the scrimmage, there's been a lot of drop balls. There's a lot of drop balls right now. So, once somebody consistently steps up and is putting the work in of Keyshawn next, I think you'll start to see a guy emerge as that number 3 spot. Other than that, it's going to be a lot of utilization of the tight ends and a rotation of the rest of those guys.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I totally agree about the tight ends being utilized in this offense, which is great for tight end right? And the fact that you got potential NFL draft pick in Will Mallory and possibly another one with Elijah Arroyo, and then you've got kind of a stable in waiting with Skinner, Brantley, and Mammarelli as well. So
and 3 kids committed in 23.
Right, exactly, with McCaskill, Carver, and Williams. So yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit, and I know Josh Gaddis will be utilizing the tight ends a lot in his offense. That's what he kind of did everywhere that he's been, especially at his last stop in Michigan. So I'm definitely excited for that group to continue to shine during spring. But I think the real storylines for me for fall camp are yes, the receivers, which we kind of touched on. That's still going to be an ongoing story as to who's going to emerge out of that group. And the other group I think would be offensive line, defensive line, and linebacker, and then also to me the second corner are kind of the main storylines going through this fall camp, because quarterback, I think we pretty much know who's going to be the starter here, and we pretty much know who's going to be the backup and the third string for the most part. And then with running back, I don't think it really matters so much who starts. And I know Coach Smith is a fan of the running back by committee philosophy, and whoever's got the hot hand will get more of the carries, or backs will be utilized in different situation sets, plays. So I really don't believe there's going to be a back that gets maybe a big difference of the majority of the carries. Now, with all that being said, Cheney is having a really good fall camp, and performed well during the scrimmage as well. So Cheney has the ability to be that short yardage, I think, type of back, which likely he's gonna get the carries on first, second, maybe first and second down. And when it comes to third down, it could be a variety of a bunch of guys, depending on the situation of the down and distance. It could be, Jalen Knighton, it could be Henry Parrish, or it could be Cheney again on third down, or maybe they run Parrish on first or second. So I don't really think that's really a topic of conversation as far as the running backs concerned, because everybody's going to get their share of the rock. But O-line is definitely something to really kind of talk about this spring, as far as who's going to be lining up at I would say right guard. Is a really interesting one. You got a lot of guys in the mix for guard, center, for the 2 guards and the center. You got a mix of guys that are kind of there to take the position. D line, there's a bunch of guys in there that for me could potentially start. And there's going to be a bunch of guys in the rotation as well. But who is going to be consistently in that rotation is really kind of the topic of conversation. And then a linebacker, I think Caleb Johnson is probably the only guy that you can probably bet some money on that will be in the starting lineup of the two linebackers. But the other one is kind of a mystery as well as far as who it's going to be. There's a variety of guys that can jump in that spot as well. But as far as all the position groups, what intrigues you the most?
I would probably say I'm intrigued with the idea of Coach Steele implementing three different units along the defensive line. Right in the scrimmage, they brought a ton of pressure. In the spring game, they were really giving the quarterback a number of different looks and coverage, as well as bringing pressure in a number of different ways. It's not really just that void zone methodology that Manny Diaz had prior to that. He gave up a ton of big plays. If you look at Coach Steele in his past stops, he has also been top in the country in tackles for loss and sacks and big plays on defense. But there really haven't been those huge lapses in coverage. There haven't been those huge lapses in gap structure responsibility. So, I put the linebacker article out today, and if you go and look at how successful he's been at developing and coaching linebackers over the last almost 20 years, it's a difference in methodology, and it's a difference in approach that him and Charlie Strong are taking to the linebacker room that is going to really help, have this fluid rotation on the defensive line. If you have guys at the second level that are making plays, flying around, you guys can bring a little bit more pressure on the defensive line. You can make a mistake without having to worry about the guy behind you making a tackle. So, Leonard Taylor got a sack in the scrimmage on Monday. Elijah Roberts was a surprise for me all over the field, coming in at he could play the three, he could play defensive end at 275, 280 pounds.
Yeah.
Daryl Jackson has been a pleasant surprise as a young transfer who's going to be making a ton of plays for us on defense. Just seeing him in person, he is physically imposing. Looks a lot like Leonard Taylor. So we're going to have 2 6'5", 2 6'6", 300-pound, 295-pound defensive tackles that can play that one of the three with pass rush ability at both spots. So, just going down the list. I mean, you go down all the way down to Allen High. We talked about Allen High as a potential pass rusher coming into high school. So having that guy as your eighth or ninth guy in the rotation, I think Miami's in a solid spot defensive line wise. I don't feel as comfortable with the offensive line. I think that's the reason that they're focusing so much on the offensive line in recruiting. But defensive line play, I think, is going to be there. You got some developmental guys like Nigel Kelly, Cyrus Moss. Nigel Kelly could have an impact as soon as this season. His pass rush ability as a 17, 18-year-old kid still is impressive. He's just got athletic traits that we haven't seen in a long time. I think if he doesn't have shoulder surgery, we're talking about him as a potential starter in this defense.
Wow. Well, which is high praise for a kid who was just in high school last season. And I was one of those guys who saw Nigel Kelly and thought that he was the best defensive end in South Florida. And people would argue with me about it, with Marvin Jones Jr., Shamar Stewart, those type of players. But I would always say, from what I've seen, Nigel Kelly is the best defensive end out of South Florida. And when I saw that he was, committed to Miami, I was like, wow. So they really have something here. They really have a guy that can at least push the starting lineup to really be great. I'm not so sure he would be able to start this season, even if he didn't have shoulder surgery, but he would definitely still be in the rotation. Well, he will be in the rotation from what we hear from everyone. I mean, Coach Salavea just, called him a tremendous talent, so I think he does have probably the highest ceiling among all of the freshmen that are in camp right now. I think he has the potential to be a first round NFL draft pick because, he's just a baby right now, and he's just really getting started. I just started really getting coached up by this amazing coaching staff, and he's getting pointers from Jason Taylor, which is not a bad thing to have. And he definitely will be in the rotation with a bunch of other guys, like you mentioned. I was somewhat surprised about Elijah Roberts, but Elijah Roberts was dominant in high school as well, um, for Columbus, in my opinion. A hotbed kid. He is always shown that he can take it to the next level, and from what I've seen from him, and he's just been out there working and really kind of working his way in the rotation, and yeah, the thing is that you are going to have some young guys in the middle. I mean, Leonard Taylor is still just a second year guy, along with Daryl Jackson. You know, these are young guys, but the potential for them is there for to be really great, to really be dominant on the inside. I worry about a possible injury to them and what that would do to the team because you don't have a lot behind them. I mean, yeah, you do have a Jacob Lichtenstein who can be there, but to lose to lose one of those guys from the rotation, I think would be kind of devastating for the team, and also at linebacker as well. If there's a significant injury to like a Caleb Johnson or a Keontre Smith, then or even like a Corey Flagg or Wayne Steed. So say if two of those guys is out for significant time, then you don't have as many guys rotating in and out. You're asking guys to play more downs than than the D coordinator and linebackers coach probably wants them to. So that's the one thing that if I'm looking on the other side, I mean everything is coming out positive out of South Florida and Coral Gables, but we have to kind of look at what could potentially be the issues going into this season, and I see that possibly being an issue down the line, and hopefully they can stay healthy, and if they do, they can be one of the best defensive fronts in the ACC. So so yeah, I mean, and then what about DB, man? Let's talk about the other DB spot because I assume that Tyreek Stevenson is going to be one of those DBs, and then let's talk about the two DB spots, really. The nickel uh, position or used to be striker position. That in the box type of corner slash safety slash linebacker position, and then the other corner position. So the contenders for me are Corey Couch and DJ Ivy, Daryl Porter. I think those are kind of the top three guys for the other corner position. And at that nickel position, I'm thinking it's Gilbert Frierson, who's now being listed as a defensive back, or Al Blades are really kind of the I think are going to be the options for those two positions adjacent to Tyreek Stevenson. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my thoughts are I think Corey Couch has already locked up that nickel spot. Just kind of hearing what the coaching staff has been saying about him, they've called him the best cover corner on the team. So that and the fact that he's up to almost 195 pounds now compared to the 175-pound frame he had the past couple of seasons, coming in at 155 his freshman year. I think he's developed into the guy that we need at the corner position. They've talked about this defense when they have nickel cornerback out there. That's got to be the best player on the field. And when they talk about Corey Couch to that level, I think he's kind of locked in that spot as that nickel guy can come off the edge a little bit if you need him to. Is covering up slot receivers, which sometimes is your best receiver on the opposite team. So I think his ability He was already skill level wise ready to play as a freshman, in my opinion, cover wise, but just needed to physically get ready to play. We saw it last year. He was inept at tackling running backs coming out of the tackle box. He really wasn't great at handling bigger receivers, but I think he's in a position to do that now with the strength and conditioning program that we currently have at Miami. So the kid is my pick for the nickel cornerback spot. I think that it's going to be a battle down the stretch for that second cornerback spot on the outside, but I'm going to go with Daryl Porter. Just from the words of Adai, how he's talked about Daryl Porter and how he's remained so skilled at corner despite adding so much weight. He's grown, not just weight-wise, but height-wise as well since he was a freshman in college. He's closer to that 6 foot mark now. He's about 190, 195 pounds, filled out, looks like an American Heritage DB that you recruit as a blue chip prospect out of high school. So I think that was a steal in the transfer portal for us. I don't think that it's talked about enough because now you got 2 guys on the outside that are able to play with bigger, tougher receivers in Tyreek Stevenson and Daryl Porter. I think Marcus Clark is a dark horse candidate to earn some playing time. From what I heard, he played pretty stingy with the reserves and the scrimmage. He's got a lot of length. We've talked about him from time to time as a guy that could step up as a potential young guy at corner spots when we're not getting the level of play that we need. So I think his confidence is starting to get there. And without the young corners really getting a chance to play, Adai's not really big on the freshmen, seeing the field that early just because there's an acclimation period, much like Colby Young. I think that he's got a really good chance to play. I think the rotation has kind of trimmed down in a way. And I think with the new coaching staff seeing his potential, he could be a guy that sees the field this year. Maybe not early, but mid-season, depending on some injuries, things like that.
Okay, definitely some good points there. I did want to also kind of jump back to the D line because we didn't kind of mention the guys that we actually would think to start on the ends. And I think it's pretty much going to be a done deal that it's going to be Mitchell Agude and Jafari Harvey. I think it's, pretty much locked in with those 2 guys from what I hear from the coaches, from what I hear from the other players, who's really kind of standing out. And then just physically, those 2 are definitely, the part. Goudet, and they're both experienced guys, that it's not like these guys, don't have game experience. Goudet was really productive over there at UCLA. And Jafari Harvey is the best defensive end coming back from last year's team. So I think those 2 guys are pretty much locked to get those positions. Of course, there could be other players, in the mix as far as defensive end is concerned in the rotation. But as far as, penciling the actual starters for the line, I don't think you can go wrong with a Goudet or Harvey.
Yeah, I think Harvey's the best defenseman on the roster. Just he's the prototype of what we've had at Miami at defensive end for a little bit now. Really athletic on the edge. A lot of people have kind of compared his recruitment to Joe Jackson, an underrated recruit that has the frame and athletic ability to come in and be an impact guy as a pass rusher who didn't have a ton of hype, right? It wasn't, he didn't have a massive recruitment. So I think that he's going to step in as that guy that could really get us back to that double-digit sack production of our defensive end 1. I think that second defensive end spot is going to be a little bit more of a rotation. I think you can pencil Agude into that spot right now as a starter, the guy who gets the first rep in the games. But Akeem Mesidor was an impact player at West Virginia at multiple spots. I think if we're playing a more run-centric team, a team that really utilizes quarterback power, quarterback read option, things like that, you might see Akeem Mesidor on the field more than Mitchell Agude. Mitchell Agude is longer, is probably a better pass rusher than Akeem Mesidor just because of his 6'5", 255-pound frame. But Akeem Mesidor has that versatility to play 3 even the one if you need him to on third down, and step on the outside with really good experience to rush the passer and be a run enforcer at that potential like strong defensive end spot. So I think it's going to be a rotation. Like I said before, I think Nigel Kelly is going to earn some playing time. Cyrus Moss, I don't think is there yet. Just he still looks like a defensive back out there with the defensive ends. He's just so tiny. I think there's going to be kind of a year. He needs a mango season, I guess you call it, right? He's going to need a little bit of a mango season. And I think Chance Williams has the potential to be a guy that we talk about as a pass rusher on this team, but we just haven't seen it yet, which is surprising because he was one of the more highly recruited kids on the team in general. So, yeah. But yeah, I totally agree with you. Penciling in those guys as the guys who get the first rep in the game. I think it's going to be a battle throughout the year with Akeem Mesidor and Mitchell Agude, depending on who we play.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. I do think Chance Williams is a guy that's going to be constantly in the rotation. Him along with Elijah Roberts and Mesidor, Agude, Harvey, Lichtenstein, Taylor. I think those are going to be the guys that are going to be rotating in and out of this D line for this season. So yeah, I mean, so we don't even need to really see the depth chart. I mean, we already know what it is. We've already figured it out here on CanesCounty.com what the depth chart is. I mean, but there's always surprises when it officially does come out, and we'll see how correct we are. But other than that, that there's really the other news that came out this week is Trevante Citizen. I think we do have to touch on that a little bit. Trevante Citizen, outstanding running back that was committed to the class very, very late in the game. It's one of those Cristobal Hail Marys that scored. And Trevante Citizen came out. The news came out this week that he suffered an injury and will miss significant time. Doesn't mean that he's out for the season as of yet. There's a lot of speculation that he is out for the season, but when a coach says significant time, that usually means at least bare minimum maybe a couple of months. I mean that's how I interpret it. So I think it's a bad thing for him. Obviously, a setback in his career, and he was likely going to see the field this season, especially in late in games where Miami's kind of blowing out teams. He was definitely going to get carried. But it is basically a red shirt that's going to happen with him, and he's still going to have another year of eligibility. And it's a situation where you have a great back that is in waiting. Once some of these backs move on that are on the roster move on to the NFL. I don't see any current backs right now moving on to the NFL next year. I think all of the backs come back. Knighton, Parrish, and Cheney. I don't see them. I don't see them being in the NFL draft, or even picked up in the after the draft is over next year. So I think it behoove all of them to really kind of stay another year. So to have a Trevante Citizen back next year or even later on in the year is really kind of a luxury that the Hurricanes have at running back, especially right now. There's not a running back committed to the 2023 class, although we do think that a running back, out of Dillard is going to commit to Miami at some point soon. You still want to have kind of a backup plan. I mean, this is football, man. Football, you have injuries, you have transfers, running backs jump into a transfer portal, and then all of a sudden, and then if you have a running back hurt, which all of the running backs have injury history. all of them, have been hurt on the, on some type of level. So running back is a position that goes through attrition, and you just have to have a backup plan. And fortunately, Miami and the Hurricane staff was able to pick up a guy like Citizen. I hope he can be back later this season.
Yeah, I think you almost have to look at him as now a 2023 running back recruit, right? And with the way the running back room has kind of developed injury wise, this is another sign that you got to recruit a running back on a yearly basis. Even if you take a punt on a guy who's a 3-star caliber player, you got to bring in depth, right? Because now we're at 4 running backs with a bunch of guys that have an injury history. Rooster is explosive. He's only 190 pounds right now. One injury could take him out for the whole year, right? We've seen it with him in the past. In high school, we've seen him be banged up. Henry Parrish is not a big guy as well. We haven't really seen any injury history too much with Parrish, but he's not a guy that's going to be able to take 20, 25 carries a game as that bell cow running back. Don Chaney, it's a different injury every year with this guy. Now we're starting to see that signature explosiveness come back in the scrimmage and in fall camp. He's looking good catching the ball out of the backfield and drills. Coaches have talked about him in a positive light. So I think he's going to be a surprise this season. Maybe not a surprise because everybody talks about him, but just a resurgence back to what we thought he was going to be coming out of high school. And Thad Franklin added a couple nice runs in the scrimmage. If we had to ask me who was going to be a transfer candidate after this season, I think he's this team's version of Gus Edwards, a kid that could do really well in a situation like a Rutgers. It could be an NFL back if he really puts it together, but I just don't see him really getting the opportunity that he thought he was going to get coming to Miami. But there's always attrition. We lost Cody Brown this offseason. If you lose Thad Franklin again, you got to bring somebody else in because you can't just live with 4 running backs on the Power 5 level. It's just not something that's going to work. Now, I do think that this could open up the opportunity for Brashard Smith to maybe go to the running back room a little bit and help us out there because we just haven't seen the development as a receiver. I think he dropped a couple passes in the scrimmage. There hasn't been a lot of talk of him doing much in spring or in fall camp so far. And we've seen him at times where you just get the ball in his hands and he's able to make something happen. So I don't think he fits the Trevante Citizen role, but you could probably bump up a Thad Franklin to take some of that big back role along with Chaney and, give Brashard Smith a role as that, opposite a Rooster as an explosive back that can take some carries away from that foursome of running backs.
Yeah, definitely. So hopefully he comes back this season and we get to see Trevante Citizen, one of the best running backs in the country, and true freshman. Hopefully we get to see him later on. But if we don't, then we have an exciting running back to look forward to next season. But also wanted to touch on the DB recruiting class because Miami did miss out on Jaden Bonsu. At first we thought Jaden Bonsu was going to commit to Miami. I mean, his recruiting process was, it started out with him being pegged to go to Ohio State, and then he moved up his commitment, and that's when it seemed like he was moving towards Coral Gables in Miami, and then he delayed his commitment again, or delayed his commitment, and then it eventually comes out that he commits to Ohio State last weekend. So Jaden Bonsu, outstanding talent. It's unfortunate that he chose the Buckeyes over the Hurricanes, but what's next for the Hurricanes as far as DB is concerned? Because we've just got Robert Stafford is the only defensive back committed, and we now missed on 2 solid defensive backs in Jaden Bonsu and Joanel Aguero. So first, it kind of raises some concern as to what's going on as far as what's being communicated to these kids or whatnot at the defensive back position. I mean, it's just kind of a natural thought, since you had so much success basically at every position thus far. Um, and defensive back is an important one. It's a very important one as far as on football field and with this recruiting class. And you want to get at least two more blue chippers at that position. Now there are plenty of guys out there. Two, very popular prospects are Cormani McClain and Damari Brown. Monty McClain, arguably the best player in the country, and Damari Brown, another one of the great defensive backs coming out of the pipeline of American Heritage Plantation legacy player, is also considering the Hurricanes as well. But what are some of the other options that you are kind of seeing out there at defensive back for Miami?
Yeah, I don't think that Miami's had great success with safeties in this class. Obviously, with the Garrow and Bonsu we missed, but we also lost on Terrence Love before that to Auburn. So we've kind of struck out going out of state with safety prospects. Obviously, to three high level programs like Ohio State, it's okay. It hurts to lose to Ohio State, but it's understandable, right? It hurts to lose to a Georgia. It's understandable. The Auburn one hurts a little bit more, in my opinion, but I think it's time to recenter recruiting back to South Florida, and it seems Miami is doing just that at the safety spot. Conrad Hussey is starting to hear from the Miami Hurricanes more and more. We should have a development this week on that. We should, I'm hoping to put out a story on his recruitment and his process. But he's a high level safety prospect that is super underrated, strictly because he didn't transfer over to the safety position from running back until about a year and a half ago. So this is a new defensive player that already has a 4 interception season for one of the top teams in the country in St. Thomas Aquinas. He's 6', 6'1", 180 pounds, 185 pounds right now. Elite athleticism. If you wanted him to play corner, he can do that as well. We saw it at OT7 in Vegas. He strapped up a number of top players, including did well against the South Florida Express receiving corps that is absolutely loaded with 5-star talent. So we've seen him do it against Tucson Turf with elite level receivers. We've seen him do it against Miami Immortals, elite level receivers. So the kid is special. And I think Hurricanes fans should be excited for the opportunity to potentially add that kid in the class. And if you get a Conrad Hussey, you could possibly shore up that second safety spot with a King Mack if you really wanted to. Those two kids they walk in lockstep with each other. They are best friends. They have played together in the same defensive backfield and both mirrored each other's production last season. King Mack is one of the fastest players in the country, sixth fastest 400-meter in the nation. He is a high-level kid despite being a 5'10", 175-pound safety. I think, a comparison for him could be like a faster version of Jaquan Johnson, who we've heard our buddy X mention as a type of comparison that he could fall into. And I think another player that has to be watched as a potential commitment later in the class, just you want to make sure you do everything you can to end up with a Cormani McClain, a Damari Brown, somebody like that, is an Edwin Joseph. Edwin Joseph has the frame and size, ball skills as a receiver to play either safety or cornerback. I think it'd be a little bit more of an adjustment for him to end up playing safety at the next level, but we've seen him at corner at high level 7-on-7 events throughout the year. Played with South Florida Express at defensive back and was a starter at times. Played for DEFCON. Plays for an elite level program in Chaminade, Madonna, where he will be showcasing his talents at defensive back this year as well.
Yeah, I love Conrad Hussey as well. I think he is just really athletic. I mean, in the state championship game, I saw him jump so high. I was just like, whoa, like right at the goal line, making a play, stopping a score. he just makes plays. He's very rangy. He has amazing range. He can cover a lot of ground. Smart kid. Knows where to be on the football field. And King Mack is similar type of player, and I would say a little bit more physical than Hussey, but makes plays. He just jumps out on film, jumps out in the game when you watch St. Thomas. King Mack, to me, many of the times was the best defensive player on the field, and playing against high level teams as well. So that would be amazing, though, to snatch away two players who love Penn State. I spoke to both of them, and they love the Nittany Lions, and they seem pretty locked in. If Miami can somehow take those two players away from Penn State, first of all, Manny Diaz is going to be super salty because he's over there and he's like, man, I got away from South Florida, and then I get to South Florida kids, and then they commit and decommit. So that's a situation that we're going to be monitoring closely. But it would be just an amazing story just to see those two players somehow flip from Penn State. It's not like Penn State's a slouch. They're perennial power. They've been, close to getting to the playoff in the past couple of years. James Franklin is a really good coach from what I hear, and the kids really like him and really connect with him, just how they do with Cristobal. So yeah, that would be an amazing get for Miami, especially right now where it's kind of dire. It feels dire. It feels dire at that position because you got Robert Stafford, who's great. He's a great player, but he is going to be someone who is going to build into somebody great because he's played kind of both sides of the football. He's a really great athlete, but um, I don't think he's not a plug and play guy first day or anything like that for me. But yeah, to get those type of players would be absolutely amazing. Edwin Joseph is definitely a player that we should, of course, keep on the radar. But I think if we wait too long, someone's going to jump on that kid. Somebody's going to really,
Yeah, Penn State.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
It could be another poach from Penn State.
right. So yeah, that's another. I mean, Penn State could essentially keep all of those kids. So it's going to be tough to flip all three, or another team could try to definitely flip Edwin Joseph as well if he feels he's not being valued like those other two guys are. So yeah, I mean it would be an amazing feat, but I don't know. I don't know if that's gonna happen. I wouldn't bet on it. Let's just say that I wouldn't bet on it right now.
I would probably be more comfortable saying I'd probably be more comfortable saying that we're going to grab Hussey. I think that I think the fantasy is to grab all three if you can, if you don't fill out that DB class. But I think Hussey is the more realistic option. He's really being communicated with by the defensive staff at Miami right now. They have been reaching out since Bonsu kind of checked out of Miami potentially. A few weeks prior. So he's hearing from Miami. He went to the Legends camp, right? He has a relationship now. When I spoke to him at St. Thomas camp, I put in the message boards, the kid, said with a smirk, there's always love for the crib, right? So that is a sign to me that he is open to the idea. And that was after me asking him if he locked in, and after somebody says there's always love for the crib after you ask if they're locked in, it sounds like there's an opportunity for Miami move in and kind of go for the kill right there. The King Mack situation, I think, yeah,
Kids say that.
they always say that. But Conrad is one of those kids that he's not a media hungry kid. You don't see a ton of interviews from Conrad. There's not a ton of social media presence from Conrad. He's one of those kids where St. Thomas keeps pretty much things in house, right? They don't really like the drama to get out. They don't really let their kids, do the crazy recruiting process. Everything's been pretty centralized to where kids are going to end up going. We haven't seen a lot of crazy recruiting stories come out of there. So I think that the kid is genuinely interested in Miami. I think that all of these kids were interested in Miami, but there just hasn't been a lot of interest. When you're going after Joe Eliguero, who's a border a fringe 5-star level kid, you're going after a Bonsu, who you turn on the tape and it's reminiscent of Miami safeties of old, right? Terrence Love was one of the top prospects in the country at defensive back. Going after Cormani McClain, Damari Brown, these are all elite level kids. And when you're going after, I think in a normal cycle where DB isn't as heavy, you're starting to talk about these kids earlier on in the process as Miami takes. I think sometimes there's just years where kids get messed over a little bit in regards to their recruitment and potential home just because of who else is in the class. So we'll see. I'm pretty confident Hussey's going to be open to the idea of potentially flipping.
Nice choice of words there. But if I had to make a bet on those three guys, I would probably say Edwin Joseph ends up in the class. I think we just need the Hurricanes to put a little bit more of an effort to present the idea to him, and that Chaminade pipeline is something that you want to continue because Zaquan Patterson is in that next class of DB, and I think if you have a guy who's there already, a year prior of him trying to decide, then that can potentially help your chances of getting a Zaquan Patterson, who to me has potential to be a 5-star guy, for the 2024 class. So yeah, so that's next up as far as DB, but as far as other positions are concerned, I think we're on commitment withdrawal. Hurricanes fans probably are, because with July and some of August as well, it's been just commit after commit after commit. Yeah, we did get Connor Liu added to the class most recently, the outstanding center out of Georgia. Yeah, so he was added to the class most recently, just adding more depth to that already outstanding offensive line class. Now, how this class can get even better is if they get, a guy that we know as Pancake Honcho, and that's Samson Okunlola. I did touch base with him recently, and still has a lot of love for the Hurricanes, but he is still looking to visit a couple more schools before making a decision. So his decision is not going to be happening before the season that we like we once thought. It's likely going to be, I would think, maybe end of September or early October is when you'll probably get a commitment from Samson Okunlola. He's an outstanding talent. He's a player that you can see being drafted not only first round, but possibly a top 10 draft pick down the line. He's that special. He technically sound and just a physical specimen. His brother's already playing at Pitt. He's also had a couple of other brothers that have played football on the college level. He's a guy that I think just solidifies this O-line, and you probably don't need anyone else to add to the offensive line with all the guys that you already have, with potentially 2 5-star guys in Francis Mauigoa and Samson Okunlola. You got Connor Liu, Tommy Kinsler, Antonio Tripp, and Frankie Tinalau. I mean, that's a pretty massive O-line haul for the Hurricanes. The only other player that is in play for the Hurricanes that we know of on the O-line is Monroe Freeling. And if you get a guy like that, who's a 4-star offensive lineman, I would be safe to say that this is the best offensive lineman recruiting class of all time for the Hurricanes. But
Is it just the Hurricanes? Is it just the Hurricanes, or are we talking about potentially ever? I mean, two five-star kids. We could see potentially one of those centers ending up a four-star guy before it's all said and done. They are both top 7 offensive linemen ranked in the country for Rivals. Monroe Freeling is a blue chip prospect himself. Tommy Kinsler just got his position changed on Rivals to offensive guard from offensive tackle. I think that, with a new evaluation going into this year at a new position, I think he could potentially threaten for low 4-star status as well. So I think, points wise, we might have the greatest class of all time. And that's a huge conversation piece when you're talking about the first real class for Mario Cristobal before he's even really coached a game.
yeah,
So this is huge. This is huge.
yeah, talk about setting the foundation for your class, for the offensive line, and for the team. It's pretty amazing what Coach Cristobal and his staff are are able to do. And we're coming up on year one, and we're still, I don't know how many months it's been about 9 months maybe, that Cristobal has officially been the head coach of the University of Miami, and he's already doing really great things with this offensive line. So I think Okunlola ends up with the class. I mean, that's just from the information that I know now, but he's a guy who is taking his time, is kind of filling out the process, and is really going to kind of carefully make this decision. It's not going to be off of emotion. It's going to be very calculated. He's a very calculated kid who, is really looking to go to a school that will accentuate everything that is pancake honcho. And literally, with that being his brand, he's looking to kind of grow that brand, just like his brother did with his brand, which is the Last Edge Bender, which I think is an amazing name. Pancake honcho is pretty good too, but yeah, so I think he's the next offensive lineman to commit. But as far as players are commit, who do you think is going to be the next player to commit to the 2023 class?
I think it's Chris Johnson out of Dillard, running back, receiver, corner, safety, whatever you want him to be. You put that speed on the field somewhere in the first couple of years of him coming to Miami. The kid is the fastest player in the state of Florida. He's the fastest track kid in the state of Florida in general as well. He is a 5'11", 6 foot, 185 pound speed demon who has some receiving ability as well. We were able to see that in the spring. He took Antoine Jackson, teammate, over the top in the spring for like a 75-yard touchdown. So the kid has a lot of great traits. He had 15 touchdowns last year as the main back for Dillard. Obviously, there's a lot of hype going in for Dillard this season with all the additions that they've made. They are a talent-heavy football team that is trying to bring back success from the 90s and even the 80s from a program that is seen as a prestigious home of South Florida.
Yeah,
But yeah, I think he's the next kid in. He's already tried to commit twice. Family pressure is the only reason he's not in this Miami class. I think that there's some family pressure trying to see what other options are out there for him to play running back. Georgia, Alabama, all these other schools are seeing him as a receiver or DB. They see him as a high potential guy just due to the size and speed, and also his ball skills, translate to those positions as well. So I think he's a Miami take. I think Miami's doing all the right things necessary to make that happen right now. The kid is in love with them. Antoine Jackson is recruiting him on a daily basis. The coaching staff is completely on board with what Mario Cristobal is doing. I think it's just a matter of time before he pledges to the Miami Hurricanes. And we've talked to the national guys about Chris Johnson as well. I think with a big senior year, he could be another blue chip prospect for Miami. And with all these blue chip prospects lining up for Miami, I think you're talking about a really historic class for the Canes in 2023.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love CJ as well. He's just got great speed. I mean, you can't teach speed, as they say, and he is the fastest at that position. And I think Kevin Smith really likes him, really likes his personality, his drive, and his willingness to just get better. And he's got laser focus on just that, getting better. And that's the type of attitude that you want on your football team, and that's what Kevin Smith wants as a running back. And I think he commits to Miami because they are continuing to recruit him as a running back. And essentially, I think that's what he wants to play. So, um, yeah, I agree. I agree. He's going to be after speaking with with Pancake Honcho. I feel CJ is going to be the next to commit to Miami. Um, Anybody else that you know of that could be, an essential commitment for Miami in the next couple of months?
In the next couple of months, I could see Damari Brown dropping. I don't think he's necessarily required to take this down to the wire. I think he wants to see some early success from Miami. I think even if you slip up at Texas A&M, as long as you win every other game going into the midseason, you're going to see the changes that are being made with a 4-1, 5-1, 6-1 type start. So I think a lot of kids want to see that happen. I think once you get to that midseason point in for the Hurricanes, you could see that next wave start to drop. Right. I think Cormani McLean is a kid that you can talk about potentially ending up in the class. I think he's going to end up committing way down the line. Right. I think he's got a really good. Him and mom have a really good relationship with DVD, which is going to be big. I don't think that Florida's still in the race, and I think that Alabama is keeping tabs. But I don't think the kid wants to leave home. So from everything I'm hearing, he's a dark horse for Miami to grab. Damari Brown, I think he's going to be a grab, and I think Conrad Hussey is going to eventually flip to the Hurricanes, in my opinion. And that's not something that we've been told just yet, but just the vibes that I'm getting from this situation, talking to the kid, seeing how he's really starting to post his offers once again. There was a stopgap in that for a long period of time after he committed in April. But now we're starting to see Oklahoma after OT7. He posts Auburn yesterday. So that and the interest from Miami, I think, is opening up the door for him to not end up in that Penn State class. I think we've talked about the 9 or 10 guys pretty continuously on who could end up in the class, but I would probably say it would be like a Damari Brown after a Chris Johnson.
Okay. I actually think Cormani McLean is like it's a coin flip for me with Alabama and Miami. I also think it's a coin flip for me for Reuben Bain, same schools, Alabama and Miami. So those are two names that I think will eventually, one or the other. I feel like one or the other. There's a really good possibility one of them will be committing to Miami. Other than that, I already talked about Okunlola. I think there's a good possibility he ends up in the class. He did also mention that he wanted to see how they looked this season. So apparently that's probably going to be a factor, and that game against Texas A&M is going to be a huge game as far as the optics are concerned for some of these prospects. So maybe not so much for the team going on, for the season, but that particular game and how they look, if they get blown out in that game, that could potentially be devastating for the recruiting class. The perception of it, or for some of these, fringe players that are kind of on the fence. So yeah, those are the really kind of the the couple of players for me. Damari Brown is also, of course, in the mix as well. Dijon Johnson, I think, is a possibility. That one to me is a coin flip with Florida and Miami as well. So Florida has gotten a lot of commits lately, and they all of a sudden are in the top 10 in the recruiting class, which is it's pretty amazing that they made such a big leap in a short amount of time with with the commits that they got, including Will Norman out of IMG. So yeah, those are really kind of the guys that I'm kind of seeing possibly committing to the class. Damari Brown, Chris Johnson, Cormani McLean down the line. We'll see, and Ruben Bain. A player that we didn't mention, and I have to say it because I'm sure somebody watching this is like, wow, they didn't say anything about Hakeem Williams. Hakeem Williams is a guy that's committing. He has a date set for September 23rd. And actually reviewed the interview that I did with him again. I looked at it because I mean this besides, talking to the kid or speaking to coaches or whatnot, this is kind of what we have to kind of dissect, right? And one of the things that he said to me really kind of jumped out to me when I listened to it again. And it was the fact that one, that he really is going to base his decision on the relationship that he's developed with said coach. That's like really big for him. That's why a team like Pittsburgh is essentially still in it. They're not a powerhouse team or school, but they're essentially in this race for Hakeem Williams because of Coach Underwood and his relationship that he's developed with Hakeem Williams. So another thing that he said was that yeah, he's got a good relationship with the staff, and every kid basically says that, right? But he also mentioned that he had a bigger relationship with the previous staff. And the fact that he wanted to mention that, like he wanted to mention, like, hey, I had a bigger relationship with the previous staff, to me speaks volumes. Because if the previous staff had a better relationship, a bigger relationship, let me just say exactly what he said, a bigger relationship with him, then that means the relationship now with the Hurricanes is not at its full potential. It's not at an all-time high, as Ruben Bain said in my interview with him. So for me, I would guess that Hakeem Williams does not commit to the University of Miami. Now, where he goes, I'm not so sure. I think Texas A&M has a shot. I think Florida State has a shot. I think Pittsburgh has a shot. And then you can never count out Alabama either. But those for me would be the top teams. Georgia's in the mix as well. They're in his top team list, but he doesn't really mention Georgia a lot. So I think it's really come down to those teams. And unfortunately, I think Miami's not going to be the pick here.
Yeah, I totally agree. I put in a forecast for Florida State. Just everything that I was hearing was that there's a strong relationship there. They're making sure Hakeem is good, and there's just a lot of factors going in Florida State's favor. Omar Graham, a 2022 linebacker from Stranahan, is actually at Florida State. They're building a little bit of a pipeline to Stranahan, and one of the things that stands out about Hakeem is he was a 4-year Stranahan kid. A basketball kid. I think that was a big reason why he stayed. But little old Stranahan is where he stayed for 4 years, despite pretty much everybody that's a known name high school wise going after him. You got IMG and Central, like St. Thomas. Everybody wanted a piece of this kid, right? Because 6'4", 6'5", running 4.4 40s. He's just a tantalizing kid. So I think every single school in South Florida that was a winning program wanted a shot with this kid, and I think there's always been rumors of him possibly transferring, but he never did. He locked in all the way through. I don't think he wants to win signing day. I think he's going to be one of those kids that kind of goes somewhere where he can create his own legacy in a way. And that's why I think this is going to come down to Florida State and Pittsburgh. I think he's okay with this smaller school or making the more unorthodox choice because that's just what he's done in the past. And everything I'm hearing from everybody is that Florida State will be the choice, but Pittsburgh is still in the race.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So yeah, I mean, wide receiver still is still a position that you want to add more to for the Hurricanes class. And I also want to mention that Brandon Ennis is not totally off the table. Yeah, he's not totally off the table for Miami. Yes, he's committed to Ohio State. Yes, he's locked in with them. But when I spoke to him at OT7, I mean, based on the way he was talking about Miami, I felt like, okay, well, Miami is like, if not his top school, his top one of the top two, one of the top two schools for him. And then days later, he commits to Ohio State. I was a bit surprised by that, of how quickly, and maybe it was Ohio State was always going to be the play for him. But as far as I guess how quickly it happened, I understand it was right after a visit. Still, and then he did kind of do that before with Oklahoma as well. Right after a visit, he ends up committing to Oklahoma. Um, but I don't think the Canes are totally out of the Brandon Ennis race. This is really just total speculation on my part. It's not like I mean I know some information, but it's more so just me just knowing that the Hurricanes are still going after him or still maintaining contact with him, just to you know see if that's still a possibility. Because Brandon Ennis, to me, he's an explosive player, technically really sound with route running, and just overall just a great athlete, just a great overall athlete. I mean, if he wanted to be the best punter in South Florida, he would be that. He's just kind of that good at everything, and played quarterback and kind of held it down for American Heritage last season when their quarterback Blake Murphy went down. So Brandon Ennis is definitely worth the pursuit for sure, even if he's committed to a powerhouse like Ohio State. But Miami hasn't had a lot of success kind of flipping Ohio State commits, so I'm not sure if that's going to happen. They are still, trying to see what they can do with Mark Fletcher as well, also committed to Ohio State. Which, if they can get those two guys, oh my goodness! I mean, like Mark Fletcher is arguably the best running back in South Florida for this particular class, and Brandon Ennis is arguably the best receiver in the country. So if they can get those two guys, which what I've seen from the University of Miami is that they swing for the fences. They swing for past the fences. They're trying to hit the car in the next parking lot. That's how far they're trying to swing, and sometimes they're swinging and they're hitting those home runs. So I say why not? Because when you have an offensive line that we've already talked about could be one of the best, not just for the Miami Hurricanes, but maybe the best ever when it's all said and done, then why not try to get the best athletes in the entire country? Why not try to get the best wide receiver, the best of the best running back, especially if they're South Florida kids, especially if they're at a school that we consider a pipeline to Miami. So we'll see how that develops, but just look out for smoke on those guys in the next coming weeks or months. I'm not saying it is going to happen, but there's definitely a possibility, that Miami somehow turns the tide on those two guys.
When there's smoke, there's fire. That's all I'm going to say about that one. Another kid that I think that we need to talk about, just because there's recent speculation, is Desmond Ricks. Desmond Ricks. There's rumors that he could be reclassifying to the 2023 class. If that happens, it doesn't hurt as much to lose Cormani McClain to Alabama, right? Because you focus that energy on Desmond Ricks as potentially the number one recruit in the country type kid, right? I mean, he is the Cormani McClain of the 2024 class. So you can grab the Cormani McClain of the 2024 class in 2023, pair him with Robert Stafford and Damari Brown. You figure out which one of them can play safety, and you plug the two in at cornerback as soon as you possibly can. I know Adai is not set on allowing freshmen to be those guys at cornerback very early on, but I think Stafford is more of the project. I think you get a Desmond Ricks, even if he has a mango season, as what is basically a high school super senior, right? Like he's in college, but he's really a senior in high school. You're going to get that acclimation year a year earlier. He's a special player. He's a special player, and if we're able to grab a Desmond Ricks and a Damari Brown, you're potentially getting the two of the best cornerback prospects we have potentially grabbed since like a Tracy Howard, right? And I think that this staff is in a position to utilize that talent to their strengths and develop them the right way comparative to a Miami staff before that wasted Tracy Howard. So I'm excited at the opportunity for Miami to recruit blue chip level cornerbacks, because if you look at the cornerback room right now, we got some talent, right? But we've relied heavily on transfers. And I don't know if you can continuously do that going forward. What people don't realize is when you take these transfers, right, it's these aren't guys that you recruited out of high school, so they come in with habits already. You want to get a guy as soon as he's 17, 18 years old so you can acclimate him to your scheme for in a 4 to 5 year stretch maybe. So it's a difference in recruiting. It's a difference in recruiting for Miami, and I think that the progress we're seeing along the offensive line is going to be had at cornerback as well in this class.
Yeah, definitely. All right. So, and we talked a lot about recruiting. So next up is really high school football. High school football is going into their kickoff classic type of weekend. So these are essentially preseason games that high school football players take very seriously. So they're not really preseason games because I mean the only thing that kind of makes it a preseason game is that coaches may pull their starters in the second half, fourth quarter type of thing. But I don't think there's any doubt that these teams want to win these games and they're going to be playing hard to win. And a lot of these teams want to be considered national championship contenders. And if you lose essentially a preseason game, yeah, I'll be in a kickoff classic to a team that could potentially knock you out of the national championship picture, even if you go undefeated in your regular season. So these games do matter. So um, there are a lot of really high profile games coming up. One of which is Venice and IMG, which is going to be an interesting game because that they're kind of crosstown rivals who are not really rivals, but they're in the same proximity. You've got Venice, who's a defending state champion, and you've got IMG, who is always in the national championship conversation, and of course out of IMG you've got Riley Williams, you've got Jaden Wayne, 5-star defensive end, and you've got Francis Malagoa, now a 5-star offensive tackle, as well as a ton of prospects. Antonio Tripp, that's right. He's now on the team at IMG. Totally forgot about that, man. I actually put out a tweet earlier that Michael Van Buren is teammates with Antonio Tripp, but former teammates now. But yeah, so you got Antonio Tripp, and then like we said, a ton of prospects like Desmond Ricks, who you mentioned earlier, Samuel Mpemba, and Jared Gibson, arguably the best running back, well, technically the best running back according to Rivals, of the 2024 class. all going to be in this game. So it's just a ton of guys, and there's a couple other guys that Miami's looking at in this game. And then Damon Wilson as well on the other side with Venice is a guy that put Miami in his top schools list. Was also at the cookout um, on Coral Gables campus, on Miami's campus in Coral Gables, I should say, not too long ago. So there's still high interest from both sides there. So it's really interesting. That I think is probably the most intriguing because you'll probably have him match up against Francis Mauigoa. So you'll really kind of get to see those two kind of line up against each other and see what Wilson does or what Mauigoa does. Your thoughts on that game?
I think it's going to be an intriguing game. I don't think that Venice has enough to win that game, but obviously it's a kickoff classic. But IMG takes all these games serious. You see American Heritage just last season, right? They played starters pretty much the entire game throughout. Carnell Tate put on a show last year. Stacey Gage put on a show. So I think we're going to see a breakout game for Jarrett Gibson, despite him just already being the number one running back in the country. Um, Watch out for Winston Watkins, 2025 receiver, the cousin of Sammy Watkins. He has potential to be the number one wide receiver in the class for his year, and he's going to be playing a lot as a sophomore for IMG. Another kid to watch is Ellis Robinson, 2024 cornerback. He's like the number two cornerback in the country. Him and Desmond Ricks combined for maybe the best cornerback duo in the nation. So that's another guy to watch. And there's just a ton of talent at IMG. It's Samuel Mpemba obviously is a guy Miami is really high on right now. If you can add him, Jaden Wayne, and a Ruben Bain, let's say, or a Damian Wilson, that solidifies a elite pass rush group. And once again, possibly the greatest, grab Miami's got at the position ever. So we continuously talk about that when we talk about Mario Cristobal's gifts. But another thing I'm excited for this week is the jamboree of Chaminade Madonna, Palmetto, and Cardinal Gibbons. Just a ton of talent on the field in that game. You get the Washington twins for Palmetto. Jaquari Barney is going to be a name that starts popping up for Miami fans over the next year or so. He dominated in the spring, was an impact player as a sophomore last year. 2024 athlete, can play safety or receiver. I think he's probably a receiver at the next level. You got Willis McGahee the fourth, who's obviously Miami royalty.
Yeah.
Probably going to be a second level linebacker at the next level, and he's a kid that could end up in the class at like him and Vincent Shavers or somebody along those lines who plays for Pace. But he's a guy that Miami's going to be recruiting, I think, to play linebacker at the next level. Also, you got Chaminade Madonna's just loaded with Miami targets. They're the most star power team in South Florida, not named IMG, you could argue. Davion Gowes is a candidate to be the 2024 running back. You got Jeremiah Smith. You got Josiah Trader. You got Edwin Joseph playing both ways. You also got Chris Ewald, 2025 corner that was, who already has 20 plus offers, 6'1", as a 15-year-old kid. He's going to be one of the top cornerbacks and overall recruits in the country. I think this is a star-powered game. Cardinal Gibbons doesn't have any real Miami recruits at the moment, but there's a lot of Power 5 talent on that side of the field. Jesse Anderson is a Pitt commit, wide receiver safety. So I think that, these halves of football are going to be star-studded and fun to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's going to be a great atmosphere. The fact that we get to see three state title contenders all in the span of a few hours is going to be it's a great way to kind of start off this football season for us. So I'm really excited to kind of see, what they got going on that during that game. And I mean, there's a lot. I was trying to think of like, oh, which player am I most excited to see during that day? And it's like there's so many really. But I think I'm probably most excited to see Zaquan Patterson play. Jerry, I mean JJ, it's like I know what JJ and JoJo can do. I've seen them just be explosive, and they're likely going to, have a blur moment, at some point in the entire jamboree. But I really want to see Zaquan Patterson make plays out there, and I'm also excited to see Edwin Joseph as well. Hopefully, he gets some work in at cornerback, and we get to see him, do his thing on that side of the ball as well. Palmetto is kind of the same thing. I'm interested to see their quarterback and how their quarterback play is going to play out. um, Quarterback play's kind of been basically the issue for them. They've had some loaded teams in the past couple of years, but haven't quite had a quarterback that could lead them or can stay healthy enough to lead them to the promised land. Gibbons is to me is in a rebuilding year. So in my opinion, I feel like they are rebuilding, although they do have the UCF commit at quarterback and risk. Um, and they've got an outstanding running back in Kamari Moulton. Jesse Anderson, committed to Pittsburgh, is one of their outstanding receivers, and they've got plenty of guys on the defensive side of the field, like Traymon Drisdom and
Adonis Allen is another guy for them as well.
and hey, I can't think of the D line kid who's now
Greg Otten. Greg Otten.
Greg Otten is a guy that I'm hoping really kind of uh breaks out this season and really kind of shows what he can do. It's really kind of his opportunity to really show that he's that next great linebacker to come out of Cardinal Gibbons. But other than that, I think the real issue with Cardinal Gibbons is going to be that offensive line. Um, you know, I think based on kind of what we saw, because you and I we were at the scrimmage last Saturday with Cardinal Gibbons and Ely, which didn't end nicely. Let's just say that didn't end in a nice way. But during the game, for what we saw, Ely and albeit it was only a half of play, and Ely did end up winning 8-7. So it was a close game. So if this was a real game, it could potentially possibly have gone either way. But still, it raises some concern. The game raised some concern about their offensive line because Ely was able to get penetration. They were able to get pressure. They were able to kind of get into the backfield, and Gibbons kind of struggled to get in a rhythm offensively. So, I mean that's kind of what concerns me the most with Cardinal Gibbons, but should be an interesting jamboree overall.
Yep. Yep. And another game I think we got to watch out for that actually I'll be at. You'll be at the Chaminade game. Is the Dillard Norland Jackson matchup. Dillard's got an abundance of Miami prospects: Antoine Jackson, Chris Johnson. They also have 3 to 4 defensive linemen that could be Miami targets in 24 and 25. They got a number of 2026 kids that's going to be good. Josiah Miguel is going to be a Power 5 prospect in the 2026 class. So I'm excited to see what they have going on. Coming in with a lot of hype as arguably the team with the most talent to beat St. Thomas in 3A Metro. Norland has Enyo Yapor at quarterback, a 2025 kid that won the 2A Player of the Year award last year. They got Javin Simpkins, who's no longer a Miami prospect, but an All-American commit. Isaiah Scott is going to be a kid with – he's committed to Georgia Tech. Isaiah Scott's going to be a kid that, gets some Power 5 love as soon – he's got Ole Miss and schools like that, but we'll see how that develops. He's a really good player at both receiver and safety. At linebacker, defensive end, they got Jeremiah Marcellin, who is a Miami prospect. He's gung ho on Miami right now. He's a more of a 3-star level player, but double-digit sacks 2 years in a row. Is one of those Miami kids that if you can keep them home, you keep them home. They're his positional versatility to rush the passer or just play as an off-ball linebacker is there. He's a very athletic player. And then Jackson's got the twin pass rush duo, the Lumen twins, who are 6'3", 240 pounds, look the part, Canadian transplants that are being recruited by Miami as well as like Oklahoma, Georgia, Alabama. They are going to be elite level kids. They played at a lower level competition last year at Miami International Academy, but is making the jump up to that 2A Metro classification this year. So I'm excited to see what they do against a larger level of play. They're going to be kids that are going to be in that talk of potential pass rush additions in the 2024 class.
Yeah, so for me, that particular jamboree, the first thing that comes out to me is like, I want how good is Norland really? Because I think they're going to be pretty good, but how good are they really? And Dillard, you can't get, you probably can't get a better measuring stick of how good you are this season, besides maybe a Chaminade or a Central, than the Dillard Panthers. They're just going to be a really good team this year. They probably have their best team in a decade this season, and interested to see how Antoine Jackson looks, the Miami commit, the only Miami commit for the well besides the kicker. We do also have a kicker committed to the 2024 class. And excited to see kind of him make plays in real game speed again. We saw him at camp shine at the Legends camp, and we'll get to see him again. And of course, we talked about Chris Johnson, so we'll get to see him do his thing against a pretty decent Norland defense, led by Jeremiah Marcelin, who is a good 2024 linebacker that Miami is also looking into as well. So yeah, I'm definitely interested to kind of see that particular matchup and really see how they hold up against that vaunted defensive front that Dillard has with Armando Blunt and Lloyd and Green. Like these players are to collectively, I think, one of the best, if not the best, group as far as on the defensive side in South Florida. So want to see how they hold up, and I want to see how EJ Yapur holds up against that type of line. I really kind of want to see him take that next step as a quarterback, because I'm a big fan of that kid. I think he can throw. He's just a natural thrower of the football. Enio Yapur is. Now, there's question maybe about his size, not being the typical size of a quarterback, but he seems like a guy that will work to get there, and I think he's just a really gifted player, and it's going to be really interesting to see him adjust or make the adjustments to that pass rush, and to see if he's still able to kind of make plays under pressure. So those are really kind of the things I'm looking for. And then, just the running back battle, the running back battle between CJ and Javen Simpkins, see who gets more yards, who has more production, that type of thing. That's going to be interesting to watch as well. The other game that we saw on tap was another Canes commit, which is Nathaniel Ray Joseph's going to be playing this week against Miramar. So what are your thoughts on that game?
I think that Edison's hurting this year. Outside of Ray Joseph, they do have another 2024 receiver that's gonna turn some heads, Division I wise, and Brandon Lowe. He's about 6', 170 pounds. Transfer from Carroll City. He's a really good player. But yeah, I think it's going to be the Ray Joseph show. I think that they're going to have to funnel him with targets if they want to have any level of success. And I think that Miramar is going to be a little down this year. They do have a kid in Trey Rigby that is a solid player, probably going to be an FCS type signee. So we're gonna see what else pops up for them. But I'm excited to see that matchup as two teams kind of rebuilding a little bit with a little bit of star power. But I think that Ray Joseph's going to be a highlight show in that game.
Yeah, yeah, me too. Me too. Excited to see that. Excited to see, what highlight he produces this week because he's basically a highlight machine. And the other game I saw was I thought I saw Heritage in Lowndes, was it?
Heritage and Lowndes. It's the only real game of the weekend. It's the only real game. This game counts. Alluding to what you were talking about, the national championship race, and building that resume. This is one of those games. Lowndes is the former home of Ja'Cory Brown. They have an elite level running back that's going to,
Well,
I'm sorry?
Thomas Davis as well. I was at a Lowndes.
Thomas Davis. Yeah. So, this is going to be a big moment for American Heritage to see what they have. Obviously, it's American Heritage and Miami Central as the two favorites in 2A Metro this year. So it's Brandon Ennis's last go for a state championship in the classifications. He won an independent state championship his sophomore year, but I think him and that 2023 group of Damian Fagan, Damari Brown, and Mark Fletcher, as well as Blake Murphy, a ULM commit quarterback, are gunning for that eluded state championship that they haven't been able to grab. Another kid that you gotta watch in this game is 2025 running back Byron Lewis. He is going to be, in my opinion, a top 5 running back in the country when those rankings do come out. He's 5'11", 205, 210 pounds, running about a 4.5, 4.6 40 right now. He's got some receiving ability out of the backfield. We're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets this year with him and Mark Fletcher. And also watch the 2026 trio of receivers that American Heritage has. Brandon Bennett runs a 10-800 as an 8th grader, was a junior Olympian in the 200. You got Malachi Tony, who is, they call him Baby Jesus for a reason. He is the truth. Brandon Ennis has raved about this kid. He is target number 2 in that offense. I think he's going to have 500, 600 yards as a freshman. And then the last kid they have is Coy Jean Lewis, who's a clone of Josiah Trader. So these are all kids that are going to be Miami targets, in my opinion, and it's going to be this is a game with a lot on the line. It's Florida versus Georgia. This game counts. You're either 1-0 or 0-1. So this is Heritage's first test in the pursuit of that state championship for that 2023 class.
I love it, man. I love the fact that they are challenging themselves really early. They did this last year. They invited IMG for their kickoff classic. Came out on the losing side then, but I love the fact that they're challenging themselves against one of the big teams in the country. And if they do win, and if they win convincingly, that's going to raise eyebrows across the country. So definitely interested to see. I don't know much about the Lowndes football team and kind of, who's over there now, but they always usually have a pretty solid team. And that game is Saturday night too. It kind of officially kicks off Saturday football. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all turns out. And then next week and the following week is a really big week of high school football. We'll review that as well. But a lot of teams will be playing teams that are great on a national scale. So South Florida, it's not like we just beat up on each other. We challenge other schools as well from other parts of the country to really kind of show how great this South Florida football is. So I'm excited to see all of the games and all of the Miami commits and the prospects or targets this weekend. We got our guy Ryan Wright that will be at the Venice and IMG game, and then Frank and I will be kind of scattered through the week. But we'll both be at that American Heritage Lounge game for sure on Saturday night. But anything else you wanted to touch on? I'm kind of
Uh,
rambling. on this.
Yeah, we ran pretty long, and I'm just excited, to finally kick this podcast off on a consistent basis. So just keep an eye out for our shows going forward.
Absolutely. All right. So until the next episode.